Okay. Hello. The claim I'm responding to is stem cell research and cloning technology should be supported for curing human illnesses. And the secondary claims are: one, stem cells are the cure for many human diseases and conditions. Two, stem cells are safe to use for stem cell therapy. And three, stem cell research is not necessarily required to deconstruct stem cells. So before I get started, I want to point out that the claim is, rather than being a claim of fact, is more of a claim of policy, and there's a dichotomy between the main claim and the secondary claims, which are more of claims of fact. In analyzing the first secondary claim, stem cells are the cure for many human diseases and conditions, I've identified it as a fallacy of language, most specifically ambiguity and equivocation, where there are multiple meanings are possible, as defined by Rybacki and Rebecki. Although stem cells can be used to cure many human diseases and conditions, they are not the cure. So, for instance, there's an emerging procedure that does not seem to be as controversial as stem cell research. So, Cal Milmo, writing for The Independent, reports a revolutionary implant of regenerative cells has knitted back together the spinal cord of a wheelchair-bound firefighter paralyzed from the chest down in a knife attack. And these are specialized human cells which repair damage to nasal nerves that to enable spinal nerve fibers to regrow and bridge a severed cord. So they take them from somewhere in the nose and implant them elsewhere, and they function similar to what stem cells would do. In looking at the second secondary claim, the stem cells are safe to use for stem cell therapy. I've identified this as a transfer fallacy of composition, and that results from unwarranted assumption that what is true of the parts is true for the whole. Again, as defined by Rybacki and Rybacki. My opponent presented the success of bone marrow transplants as evidence for the secondary claim, and only that. So, however, this does not constitute overall success of stem cell therapy. In analyzing the third secondary point, stem cell research is not necessarily required to deconstruct stem cells. This last secondary claim is more irrelevant as the grounds do not support the claim. Rather than presenting examples of how the use of stem cells does not warrant research, my opponent presents examples of stem cell procedures. So to counter this, Luis Toledo Pereira writes about the importance of medical and surgical research in the Journal of Investigative Surgery, and how research is the driving force behind the improvement to medical science. Further, D. Sips, writing for Regenerative Medicine, states that recent years, however, have also seen alarming growth in the number and variety of claims of clinical uses of notional stem cells that have not been adequately tested for safety or efficacy, alluding to the need for research. And finally, David Magnus, writing for the Journal of the American Society of Law, Medicine, and Ethics, writes that the International Society for Stem Cell Research developed guidelines for clinical trials, also known as research, and at the same time, guidelines and regulations must make it possible for the clinical research to take place that may lead to life-saving and life-changing treatments. So to conclude, there is a dichotomy between the main claim and the secondary claims. Stem cells are only one of the cures for many human diseases and conditions. Stem cells may be safe to use for stem cell therapy, but this claim cannot be based solely on the success of bone marrow transplant. And finally, research is a necessity in medical procedures, especially in one as controversial as stem cell therapy. Thank you.
All right, the structural stuff is all fine. In a couple of the points, actually in all 3 points, you do something that is probably okay in here, but isn't going to help you much in communicating with other people, and that's making reference to the particular fallacies. Somebody outside of this is, well, a fallacy of of composition, or we've got a transfer fallacy that's going on here, or that the grounds fails to support the. It's okay in here because that's what we're talking about, but you want to be careful about trying to be too technical on that. Just explain what the issue is. And most of the time you did that too. So you weren't using that as a substitute, but you're using it as a shorthand for this particular class. That's okay. But like I said, outside of this context, I think that's a little bit problematic. Your argument on the first point, I think, is okay, saying that stem cell research is not the cure, that there are other things that are going to achieve these sorts of outcomes. I think that's okay. That diminishes the importance of that argument. On the safety issue, I heard a better argument on the safety issue on the later point, saying that we needed to do more research on this. On this one, it just seems to be about the bone marrow, and it's not the same thing on overall success. That's I think a good argument there, but I'm not exactly sure that it applies to the safety point as much as the material that you had later on that said that we need more clinical trials of all these kinds of things, and some things haven't really been developed very well. I like the. To me, it's a little bit confusing because I'm looking at the third point from the advocate's own claim, and it says stem cell and cloning should be supported because it's going to do all these things. And then the third point says it's not required, and I'm going, whoa. If we don't need it, why should we be doing this? That just on its face is counterintuitive. Now, it may mean that their claim, that third claim, actually meant something else, but I'm not sure that what it meant. And that would be something to point out. Since if the third point is true, that contradicts the main proposition as opposed to supporting the main proposition. If it really means something different, then you have to kind of explain what it means that's going on there. So I thought you did a pretty good job. I thought the analysis of the advocate's reasoning was really strong, and you had some pretty good evidence too. All right, thank you.